everybody, Perspicacity913 here. I am here to do a book review of the book The Vault of Dreamers. I still haven't figured out how to pronounce this name. I'm sorry, but Miss O'Brien, I love this book and I'm about to tell you all why. So The Vault of Dreamers had 3.52 stars on Goodreads, which I was actually really surprised about because when I first put the book down, my immediate thought was like 5 stars. 5 stars. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And then I sat back and thought about it for a while, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. And I'll link my Goodreads review below. So, getting into the plot of the book is set sometime in the future. I'm not sure how far in the future. And the protagonist's name is Rosie Sinclair. And Rosie attends, we see her in the Forge School. So, the Forge School is this school for creative students. So they study art and dance and singing and photography, things like that. It's a creative art school, and Rosie is there, I believe, because of her film skills. She wants to make movies. It's interesting because the students, for 12 hours a day, their lives are broadcast to the world. So it's a reality TV show at their school. So for 12 hours, everything they do, besides, of course, like go to the bathroom and shower, things like that, it's all recorded and kind of put out for the world to see. And for the other 12 hours, that show is put on loop, and the students are actually put to sleep. They take a pill to go to sleep every night, and it's supposed to enhance their creativity. So when the book opens, this is not a spoiler, we see Rosie skip her pill for nights because she kind of just misses the nighttime. She misses being awake during the nighttime. She just kind of wants that feeling again. I think Rosie is a bit of a night owl, and I can relate to that. And of course, then she sees some things happening at night that students aren't privy to because they are always asleep. And this kind of starts the whole adventure of the book. I did notice that some of the negative reviews that this book got on Goodreads stated that, the book kind of lacked the violence and, I don't know, grit to make it feel really raw and uncomfortable. But I will say, without getting too much into spoilers, that the book, to me, the intangible kind of feeling of the story lends to the story itself. This isn't a book about people fighting their way out of, the jungle, or I don't know, any other kind of physical thing. It's a very mental and cerebral story, and it has a lot to do with the mind and the inner workings of the mind. And so I thought it was kind of a perfect tone for the book to set. I don't think things have to be violent necessarily to be uncomfortable, and dealing with matters of the mind is probably one of the most uncomfortable and violating things that can happen. And so I really appreciated that fact that the book was light on violence, I guess, but it went really deep into, thoughts of the mind or thoughts of the mind. It went really deep into matters of the mind and consciousness and things like that. So I thought it was great. So I think this is the time where my spoilery or my non-spoilery review ends. If you haven't read the book, I really, really encourage you to read this book. I'm a sucker for books set in high school, so if you like those kinds of books, definitely pick this up. If you like it's like a psychological thriller, but it is less violent and more kind of like surreal, and I appreciated that. So I'm going to move on to spoilers. And so pick up the book if you haven't, and if you have, stay along with me and hear some of my thoughts and hopefully respond with your own. I will say that the 12 hours of sleep, like being put to sleep every night, sounds creepy to me, and I don't know that I could even attend the school just because of that, straight up. So I just want to get into a little bit about Rosie and kind of how she builds relationships and how reckless Rosie actually is. And I don't mean reckless in a bad way, but when her back is up against the wall, she just figures something out. She figures out a way to make what she wants to happen. I think she sees herself as more of like a wallflower type of a person, but she definitely can stand up for herself. It might take her a while to get there, but she can definitely do it. For example, as I mentioned, Rosie starts with a blip rank of 93, and you have to be in the top 50 to stay at the Forge School. And so that's why she takes the pill, or she doesn't take the pill in the first place. She thinks she's going to leave. And so she's like, well, I might as well, enjoy a night here since I'll probably be cut anyway. But the next day, she meets Linus, who becomes her boyfriend, her love interest through the story, through this book. And he works at the school. He doesn't attend. She, meets him and is pretty, not even necessarily bold, but a little bit reckless in how she formed her relationship with him. I think he was distrusting of her at first, and then she gained his trust, and he wanted to help her out. And so I'm not sure actually when their relationship started, if they thought it would be a relationship or if they just wanted to get her to stay at the school. And that was a pretty reckless move when she, went and kissed him and all of that. It was also pretty, not necessarily reckless of her, but a little bit bold for her to sit with the students that she sat with, Max and Janice and Paige, and asking them to ask the people that are watching them to tune into her feed so that she could get an increase as well. And they do it as kind of like a social experiment, but it was definitely a bold thing of her to ask, and something I don't even know that I would have asked for in that situation. So I appreciate the way her mind works, and I really, really love Rosie and her character in this book. One other interesting thing about this story is that I feel like in a certain way, class, like socioeconomic class, things like that, take a backseat to talent in this school. So the students come from all over, all different socioeconomic classes, all different backgrounds and everything. But once the cuts happen, the students kind of all seem to not necessarily band together. There's always, personality clashes and things like that, but they respect each other's art. They understand that they are all there for a reason. And I thought that was a super interesting way of kind of making a comment on how class can be deconstructed, but something else can take its place. For example, I think it's Paige who talks about, basically if you get to stay, you are better than the others who have to leave. Also, I think she feels a little bit of superiority toward like the kitchen staff, which is where Linus works, or, staff members in the school who aren't as creative. And so class kind of takes a back seat. And I just think that's a really interesting kind of commentary on how, people think about other people and relate to others, and build relationships based on things other than class, and how class seems to be less important when those relationships form. So I also want to talk about the concept that's kind of at the core of this book that you don't really get to until a little bit later, but the concept of like mining and seeding dreams is super interesting, and a little bit scary. So Rosie finds out basically through a lot of sleuthing and spying and all that good stuff that what the dean and a few other staff members at the school are doing is coming into the students' rooms while they're sleeping and mining their dreams. So what they're doing is they're somehow going in and taking the students' dreams away from them. And so I just thought that was super, super interesting. And again, I feel like a violation of the mind can be even more intrusive than a violation of the body. Our body is set to heal itself, while our mind, honestly, sometimes fractures, and it sometimes represses things, and all in the sake of having us move on. So I just want to talk a little bit about why I knocked this book down to 4.5 stars after giving it some thought. And really, it was just because I believe that suspension of belief is important in a story. Sometimes you have to suspend belief to kind of grasp the world that this story is set in. But I thought there were quite a few things that were just a little bit unrealistic. I didn't really mind the concept of mining and seeding dreams, although that does seem pretty unrealistic to me. But the part where Rosie's parents signed their parental rights over to the dean of the school just seemed super far-fetched. And I understand, like, Rosie isn't from a very well-off neighborhood. She isn't from a very well-off family. They don't have the resources to help her. The thing is, they think that she is insane after hearing her story. And maybe not insane, but that she's had some sort of mental break. And they don't have the resources to help her, so they sign over their rights to the dean of the school, and he is now her guardian. And that, I kind of wish that her parents had looked into things a little bit more. They didn't really have a reason to, honestly. No one suspects this of the school, and so it's hard to say that they should have, but I really kind of wish that they had delved a little bit deeper. But of course, if she hadn't been signed over to Dean Berg, the rest of the series probably couldn't happen. So I understand that. But there was just things like that in the book that I was like, okay, there's a little bit, that's a little far-fetched. And so I knocked it down a little bit for that reason. Also, Dean Berg has custody of all of these bodies that they're like seeding these dreams into, which I just think is super weird. It just adds to the weirdness of the book, but not in a bad way. I thought that was a super interesting part, and it makes him even creepier, in my opinion. And I think he's going to be a pretty creepy character throughout the rest of this series. Lastly, I just want to talk about the ending a little bit. That ending was crazy when, they're mining her dreams and they're in her head and they kind of take a dream out and her consciousness has split at this point. You see it several points in the book where she seems to be talking to another voice in her head, and you think, I thought at least, that it was someone in her head kind of warning her, but I think we're supposed to believe at the end of this that it's just her two separate consciousnesses. I don't know if that's how you say that, but because her dreams have been mined so often, they really like Rosie's dreams. Apparently they're very vivid and intense, and so she's dissociated from herself a bit. I think when you take away someone's dreams, their dreams are a way of processing what happens, in life, during the day, etc. And so to take someone's dreams, I could see that causing a real mental break in somebody. And I think that's what happened to Rosie. The fact that she was able, the part of her that she at least recognizes is able to leave with the dream and be seeded into someone else. That was awesome. It was such a cliffhanger. I have no clue what's going to happen next, who she's going to be seeded into, just how she's going to figure out once she's another person, I guess, or not another person, but in another body, how she is going to kind of continue on and try and save the school and the students and all of that good stuff. And so I don't know, the ending blew my mind, and maybe it didn't for many people, but I thought it was phenomenal. So that is it for my review, of The Vault of Dreamers. I really did enjoy this book. I cannot wait for the second one. If you have thoughts or questions, leave them below. I'm happy to discuss. I would love to discuss this book. I don't know many people who have read it, and so I would love to just have a discussion with you all about some of the things brought up here. Other than that, I'm going to end it right here. This is already pretty long. We're going to have to edit quite a bit of it. And so I'm just going to say thank you for being with me. You don't have to spend your time with me, and you're here anyway. I greatly appreciate it. And yes, I look forward to seeing you again in another video. Perspicacity913 out.